you had an Amish upbringing.
I did.
Can you tell us all about that? I've so many questions, but I'll let you run with it and go ahead.
No, go for it. It was great. Well, it's the only thing I knew. So I would never raise my kids like that, obviously, because look at me now. But it was great in the sense of, I think mentally, that's a tough question. It was good because like we didn't have technology. So our house was very quiet. There's no refrigerators running. There's no TV on. So everything you do as a kid, you're playing with blocks where you're using your mind to make your imagination happen, to where kids now will sit and watch a TV for hours and the TV is controlling their imagination, so to speak.
Yep.
So from that aspect, I'm appreciative of it because it did change the way I think. I think a little bit more left brain now. Wife says I'm way different. So she sees the impact more than I do.
Right.
But but then from a religious perspective, I obviously disagree with them and don't want to raise my kids thinking they're going to hell for driving a car.
Right.
So
can you go back to that community ever? Or are you still friends with people who are Amish or? This show is sponsored by Open Recovery Addiction Help. Whether you're newly sober, in long-term sobriety, or even maybe looking to make a change in your life, Open Recovery offers 24/7 support right from your phone. It's anonymous and packed with tools to help you stay connected, stay accountable, and build the life you deserve. Download the Open Recovery Addiction Help app today and take the next step in your recovery journey.
I see my dad. I've seen him once in the past 7 years. I probably could see him more if I chose to. I see I see my Amish siblings once every couple of years. I still have, there was 9 of us, so I still have 2 brothers and 2 sisters that are Amish. I haven't seen the sisters in many years, but the brothers, I've seen both of them within the last year or so. But if I was to go hang out there, we were from uber conservative Amish, like the second most conservative in the United States. So if I was to go hang out at their house, show up there 2 or 3 times a year, they'd probably be like, "Hey, how about you don't come for a little bit?" So,
you got to tone it down.
Yeah. They don't want their kids to see us and go, "Hey, if he's my uncle and he drives a car, why am I dealing with this horse right now?" And he has AC and he doesn't have long hair. So.
Are you the only one in your family who's broke free from the Amish lifestyle?
No, my mom is broke out. There's 9 of us total, and I have 4 that are still Amish. So at least 5 of us that are not. So right about split in half.
Okay, so you, your mom, and 3 other siblings. Your dad is still
4 other siblings. My mom and me and 4 other siblings.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay,
and my dad is still Amish. Yes.
Okay, your mom and dad together still?
No.
Okay.
They're still legally married on paper, but they haven't lived in the same house in mid-teens years.
Imagine that household. An Amish partner,
right,
and a non-Amish partner. You got to keep a wall and halfway point in your house.
One of them lights a candle, the other one turns the switch.
So what was the breaking free process like?
I kind of piggybacked out on my mom, so that was pretty easy for me personally, but for her, they basically kicked her out because she believed that according to the Bible, John 3:16, the most common Bible verse in all the world, that you can know if you're saved, if you're going to heaven. And they said, you cannot say that because then you're judging. So you're going to hell. Well, then you're judging me by telling me I'm going to hell for saying that. So, but that's the basics of why they kicked her out.
Yeah, it's contradicting.
Yeah, it's very contradicting. It doesn't make sense at all. Yeah. So they booted her out, and I was right before I turned 16. And so I just kind of chose to go. Everybody knew anyway that I expect that, because we never had that great a relationship with my dad. And so I think everybody around us expected me to go with my mom's side of the family in that split. So
now your family obviously still talks to you. You go and visit your brothers, your dad once in a while. Now the Amish community, are you completely excommunicated?
So each Amish group has their own set of rules. So the more conservative ones, yes, they wouldn't do any business dealings with me, but the more modern ones still will.
Mm.
So we actually haul a bunch of hay for the more modern ones. And they're like, oh, cool, you can talk our language, because they all speak Pennsylvania Dutch as their primary language. And so like, oh, cool, someone we can understand. But the more conservative ones, I have delivered to their places, some that didn't know who I was, and I just didn't tell them.
Yeah.
But yeah, they wouldn't associate with me at all.
When you show up, they send smoke signals to one another.
Right.
Like, he's here.
Yeah.
Get him out of here. No. No, that's cool. So you were 16 when that happened. What was life like once you transitioned back to, I don't want to say normal life, because what is normal nowadays, but to regular life?
At first I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like all I got to do is cut my hair, change my clothes, get my driver's license. And I'm like, Amish call them English people. Yeah. And I'm an Englisher. And then a few years into it, you realize, dude, I am so lost in this world. I know nothing about sports. I know nothing about vehicles. I know nothing about engines. Like all of those things that normal people, like normal society talks about and knows about and is into, I knew zero about.
Yeah.
So I still don't even understand football. Like I've watched one football game all the way through, and I was a Super Bowl from a few years ago. I don't even remember who won. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to go to a friend's house and party for the night.
Yeah.
But
just another excuse to party.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, hey, whoever won. But so there's a lot of things like that. And I struggled with depression for a while after coming out, after being out for a few years and realizing just how big the world is and how lost I really am in it. And then, because now you don't have family, and you don't not really have family. I had some family out, but not like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can't go to your cousin's house and be like, hey, what's up? Remember when we were kids? So I mean, it was wild.
Depression is common amongst, teenagers who have grown up in this world, as an Amish would say, like an Englisher.
As an Englisher.
But you had a drastic change from one lifestyle to you're opened up to the world now. And that depression is a significant depression. What was that like? And how did you come out of that?
It was my biggest struggle was aloneness. And maybe that's for everybody. I don't really know. I guess I've never talked to that many other people struggling with depression, but I always felt just really alone. Like even if I was around other friends and stuff, I just felt dead alone. This sounds so cliche, but the thing that pulled me out of it, I started going to counseling. I found a Christian counselor, and he got me to return back to, I guess, to my faith, but not in an Amish way, but believing in a higher power, believing in God. And that's the thing that pulled me back through and realize that life is bigger than me. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that has pulled me through. It completely changed my life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, realizing there's something more. It's kind of like an addict and stuff that goes through. You got to understand that there's something bigger than you, higher than you. And
yeah, believing in a higher power. From an addiction standpoint, I can speak to that. I'm clean and sober. And one of the things a tool that is strongly suggested is finding a higher power, whether it's God or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be God, but something greater than yourself.
You have to understand you are not the king of the jungle. You are,
Yeah.
Congrats on your 7-year clearance, by the way.
Thanks, awesome, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. It was a long road to eventually, find sobriety, but it's a beautiful thing, and like helping other people and stuff like that. And I've implemented, like you said, God in my life now today. I was at church yesterday.
Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's changed my life. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And that is a very useful tool. It's a crucial tool in, getting through any kind of adversity that you're facing, whether it's depression, addiction, trauma, whatever. So,
Yep. Has it gotten easier as the years go on?
It has, but it's a different type of struggle today. And I don't even want to, that's the wrong word. It's more of, there are different things that make my life unmanageable or create unmanageability in my head. And that's life on life's terms. You get older. I have a daughter. I am in a relationship. I'm doing my job. There are just other struggles and, it's life on life's terms. So it's
Very
a
true.
different type of struggle than when it was 7 years ago. Waking up, trying to come up with money to get high every day. It's different.
And living when you're not high, having that feeling of like, the dope sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. Going through a detox. So you eventually moved to Tennessee. How old are you when you moved to Tennessee?
I was in my mid-20s, 25 to 27. I really should know that. 2008.
Okay.
And I'm now 40, so 26? Sure, let's go with that. I don't even know.
Yeah.
In my mid-20s.
Yeah. And what did you move out there for?
I had a buddy that wanted to do music in Nashville, and him and I were both single at the time, and I'm at his house one night, and and he's like, long story short, I told him, hey, if you can get me, he Googled and found the job at the prison. I wanted to get into law enforcement. And so he Googled and found the prison there. I called them. They said, yeah, go online, print off our application. So I applied with them, called back the next day. I called back the next day, talked to the little Southern lady. She did a phone interview and it's like, well, you got to be a resident in the state to work here. Okay, but I don't want to be a resident in the state if I don't have the job, because I don't want to locate down there and then not have a job, because I was in north of Indianapolis at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they pretty much hired me over the phone. They're always short staffed.
Yeah.
The Tennessee Department of Corrections is. And so, went down and did an interview, and I spend that first week at 2 interviews. So I spend that week in my buddy's apartment he was renting, which was a basement. And so did the interview and they gave me the job.
That's awesome.
Right hot out of the...
Because the demand was so high for new correctional officers.
Correct. Yeah. Tennessee at that time, they were way understaffed and way underpaid. And so they would take whoever. If you had a driver's license and go walk in there, they gave you the job pretty much.
Get there on time. So, okay. So you start and you're a correction officer. Where are you working? Are you allowed to share that? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
I got assigned, I applied and got hired on at Riverbend Maximum Security, which is just 15, 20 minutes outside of Nashville.
Okay.
And I got assigned to work with death row inmates right out the gate. So it sounds crazy, but it was actually turned out really well, because the way Tennessee runs its death row, it's a very smooth run unit. So it actually turned out to be a blessing. And it's when you're doing it in the moment, you don't realize how cool it is. But later when you're done, you're like, dude, I can't believe I work with death row. What's the chance of me getting assigned to that? So I got assigned to working with death row for 5 days a week.
Can you walk us through, you're assigned to death row inmates. What does the day-to-day look like? You're around inmates who are waiting for the death penalty, to, be executed.
Yep.
What is the most common method of execution in Tennessee? Is it injection?
Lethal injection, yeah.
Okay.
If they were, it depends on how their court stuff was done, but I believe if they were assigned to death after a certain time, they get to choose between the electric chair or the lethal injection.
Okay.
And they've had, over the past 10 years or so, they've had guys choose both ways. So some of them will choose lethal and some of them still choose the good old chair.
Okay.
So, which is, I don't know, that'd be my way of choice to go, but hey, guess when you're down to the end, it doesn't matter that much.
Injection would be my way.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Yep. Let me go to sleep and then just be done.
Smooth sailing.
That's right.
So what does day-to-day look like working on death row?
I always say working at the prison was like a crazy adrenaline rush that never happened, because you're always on guard. You're always like watching, counting. Tennessee's death row is done. They're all considered a maximum security inmate. But then when they're within the unit, like inside the building there, they have different levels. They have a level A inmate, a level B, and a level C, and then what they call a special pie flap, which is basically a supermax inmate. So the level A is allowed because by law, they get 1 hour of rec time and like a 15-minute shower each day. But on level A is a good behavior program. And so if they're in that good behavior, they get like 6 hours of rec time. They can be out of their cell without shackles, even though they're considered a max security inmate. They can, as long as they're within our unit, within the building, they can be out like up to a dozen at a time per one CO with no cuffs or nothing on. They get like 6 hours of rec time a day instead of 1. They get unlimited phone time. They have a lot of these perks that the state has worked in to help them be on good behavior. And it's worked. It worked very well. And then the B level, they'd have to be in cuffs and escorted wherever they go. I think it was only 3 inmates per officer on a rec yard. And then they step them on down to like your C level's got to be 2 officers, shackled all the time, 1 hour rec, where they tighten them down a lot. But it's helped guys to be on good behavior and work their way. It gives them something to work for. Because when you're on death row, I mean, what you got to work for besides your life? Like nothing else really matters. So
what level were you on?
I was just a CO.
Right, but you have A, B, C. Were you one of the letters? Or?
They were all, the inmates were all together, or all in the, each inmate has its own individual cell. And so they just have a label on the door, what level that inmate was. So there's a white paper, the yellow paper was for the level Bs, and then the pink paper was the level Cs. And
Got it.
I don't remember what the Supermax inmate, there was only 2 of them in there. And I don't remember what their levels were.
Got it.
Or what their colors were.
Everyone was aggregated into the same area, but you could change from cell to cell levels, A, B, C, et cetera.
Yes.
Your free time was contingent upon and or shackle, no shackle, and how many officers.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And you were all in the same building in individual doors.
I feel like people on death row, were they well behaved? I feel like
for the most part they were in Tennessee, but also on death row, you're dealing with a lot of guys that at that time in Tennessee, a lot of those guys have been on there for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Some of them 30 years. So that's a lot of time to get all that young vinegar out of your system and realize that you're there for the long haul. You have guys in there that are mid-50s, like not a bunch, but probably half of them are older like that. And being locked up, you age differently.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a concrete building, eating prison food.
Yeah.
So overall, they were fairly well behaved. Yeah. Death row ran, as far as I know, there was the smoothest running in all of the Tennessee and all of any state that has their death row set up. Like that's the only one that has it set up like that with the level like that. But you also it runs smoother because if you're assigned to death row in Tennessee or get the death sentence, you have like 3 attorneys or something like that work for you. So they might not be able to get you off a death row, but man, they'll get you a cleaner tray or better food or like it's a very, all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed on within the unit because everybody has attorneys that are just looking for something to go get the state for. So that also forces the state to keep it a smoother running unit. And you want to keep the inmates happy because you don't want that inmate freaking telling his lawyer to come sue you because you got mad and didn't give him his tray that day. So
that's interesting. The COs are held. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you? Right. Yeah. The COs are held accountable. I would think like, these are death row inmates. They're on their way out. Fuck it. Like no holds bar. Let's beat the shit out of them. And when in fact, that's not it.
Absolutely not. You're held at a very high standard. And I think because Sarge that ran death row at that time, I think he's moved on up to captain now, but he got to hand select everybody coming through the academy who he wanted in his unit. And so I think that's probably why I got picked because I was just a 10-year little ginger kid. And he's like, I can mold that guy into whatever I want him to be. So he got to pick, he got first choice of everybody coming through. And so he would try to choose guys that he could know he could make them, you know what I mean? That we're going to be not somebody coming in looking to pick a fight every other day and like. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you were young and you were teachable and he can train you however he wanted. Yep. What was the youngest person that you saw on death row while you were there?
Oh, just off the top of my head, there was a young black guy and I'm blanking on his name. Like Chandler or something like that. He was in his upper 20s. He was about my age. I think he was like 2 years older than me. So that's pretty, that'll mess with your head a little bit when you see someone else that's your age and you're like, dude, like that's crazy. I thought a lot more about death row people and the meaning of it and stuff now that I'm away from there. When you're there and you're just doing a job, you're just like, listen, my job is to keep you here, to keep you fed and taken care of until the state can turn your lights out. And so, and at the time, I remember at the time when I met that guy and realized he was only a couple of years older than me, going, man, there's not that much difference between you and me. Like and the other thing too, that most people in the public don't understand, and I got some crap on comment section from another podcast, but some of those guys that have been on death row for 20 years are not the same person, because people change and they're not the same person that they were 20. Should they still be executed for their punishment as their punishment? Probably yes. And they understand that. But at the end of the day, they're not the same punk kid chumped up on drugs, trying to killing people to get that $60 to go get his fix again. They're no longer that person. And so for me, that's a tough battle in my brain going, you know what I mean? That's a tough.
Yeah. Well, do you think that you're in their living habitat and that they are master manipulators to the 100%. Point where they have manipulated you to think that they are a good person and that they've changed?
Yes. And some of them you can tell they're manipulating you, but some of them, when you're around someone for a long time, and I seen these guys 5-6 days a week for 14 months straight, you'll see the ones that'll crack, the ones that are just putting on a face. And I'm not saying that I would invite any of them to come move into my house.
Yeah.
It was just interesting. It's interesting to be around those people that.
Yeah, of course. I mean? Did you see a lot of emotion working there? People knowing that their lives are going to end.
You didn't talk about it a whole lot because it would bring up emotion if you were like, so when's your date coming up? Or how's your trial? Like you just wouldn't.
Yeah.
But you would see them amongst each other. They were executed one inmate during my time there, and the whole unit changed during that few weeks leading up to it. And then about a week afterward, everything was just quiet, like eerily quiet. People were not going to doing their rec times. Like it just became, it was a really high stressful situation during that time.
How long did you do it for?
14 months.
14 months, so a little over a year. And in 14 months, only one person from your unit was executed?
Correct. Yep. We were just at the tail end in 2009, 8, 9, 10. There was a big controversy over the lethal injection stuff, whether it was humane or not. And so that was just at the tail end of some courts here and there going, okay, yep, it's good to go use it and do it.
Yeah.
And so Tennessee had a hold on executions for several years before I got there. So they had kind of piled up. I think there was 89 inmates there then, and now they're down to like 40 or 45. So they've really cleaned house since I left.
And by clean house, you mean
they've started putting
execution.
Them down. Yep. They've started cranking out the executions since then.
That person, did you walk him to his execution?
No, they had a special team that comes down and gets him because 72 hours before the execution, they take him up to what's called the infirmary. It's basically their medical center.
Yeah.
And he'll be monitored by 2 officers and a corporal, and medical will check on him every 3 or 4 hours. They do like all your vitals and stuff. But he's on basically has a whole team that monitors him the 72 hours leading up to his execution. He's being people sitting there watching him 24/7. He'll be dressed in a paper gown. So I was the officer that brought him back from when his attorneys showed up like 4 days just before they took him to the infirmary to inform him that all the appeals have expired. They tried to get the governor. He wouldn't stay his sentence. And so I was the one that strip searched him from that visit and brought him back into his cell. And the Sarge gave me a heads up before I went out. He's like, hey, make sure you're doing all your everything right. But just so you know, here's the word that his attorneys just came to tell him. And that was fascinating I shouldn't say fascinating. It was wild to see a person that had just got those news and what mattered to him in life. And then nothing really seemed to matter. He wasn't like violent or angry or upset or anything. It was like he had left. Like his body was there and he had just checked out completely. And that next 24-hour period, he was just he was giving out the last of his stuff he could give away, and he knew it was over with. And it was just so, for me mentally now, it's so crazy to see a person that's completely healthy and normal and knowing to have that date coming up. But as the family member, the people of his victims, to them, it's a good closure time. And so, in case you can't tell, I struggle a lot with this stuff in my head now.
Yeah.
So, but that was wild. It was just crazy to see a person. It was fascinating is not the right word. I'm repeating myself a lot.
No, I get what you're saying. We don't see this stuff every day or hear this stuff every day. So it's like, it is fascinating in a way. I get it.
Yeah. And when you see a person knowing that their time is coming up in 72 hours, it's just crazy what that does to humans' brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is the last meal thing true? You get to pick your last meal and all that stuff?
Yes, you do. It has to be, I believe Tennessee's is $40 or $45 value or less. And it has to be, what did they say, within a reasonable distance. So you can't be like, I want Chinese from China. Yeah. They won't ship it in for you. But yeah, you can. It's within a certain, like the law is written up on what the distance is on how far they can make you go. But yeah, they can pick, generally it's fast food and a Coke or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can pick their last meal and the state will bring it to them. And I don't know how much you would enjoy it, but you get to eat it.
What was the craziest thing you saw on death row during your time there?
The craziest thing I saw from a death row inmate was probably one of the inmates trying to cut. Does YouTube demote
you can say whatever you want.
Okay. He tried to cut his own penis off. That was probably the craziest, the grossest thing. But he didn't cut straight down. Like Henry Hodges just cut his off a few years ago. I don't know if you know who he is or anything.
No, I don't.
He's one of the most well-known inmates on death row, one of the most violent inmates in the Tennessee prison system.
Oh.
But he cut his off. But so this guy didn't cut. Henry just took a knife and cut his off. And then he told the seal, look, it's right here, and picked it up for...
So this guy was unsuccessful at doing it.
Correct.
Oh,
he was cutting at an angle and like cutting basically back into his stomach, his pubic hairline cutting back in toward his stomach and cut in several inches deep. And then,
my God.
Yeah, he was having a psychotic episode. He was on meds, but he heard voices through the wall telling him to go F his mother. And so he didn't want to do it. And so he cut it off. Yeah.
Cut it off.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
That was pretty, that's a pretty wild thing to see another human being like, you know what I'm just going to do? I'm going to cut off my favorite body part.
Yeah. C'est la vie.
Yeah. Yeah. And they stitched it back on and gave him his meds. I don't know if it worked or not, but they got him sewed back up. So the doctor went in cleaning out the blood, went up to his second joint on his pinky, scraping out the blood clot stuff out of the cut. So he cut pretty deep. He had a razor blade, took the razor blade out of his, for shaving. You're supposed to account for it. Like whenever you give an inmate a new razor, the officer's supposed to, and they don't, people always slack and don't check that stuff. And he pulled one of the razors out of his shaver and just freaking started hacking on it. So
you were talking about this stuff impacting you now, and you've, thought about it more so now. Did it impact you following your tenure in the prison?
If you'd asked me then, I would have said no. But like that stuff, not as much, but the counting people all the time, sitting with your back to the wall all the time, like your normal law enforcement issues. When I sit at a restaurant, I will sit with my back out now toward the public, but I think about it. It never doesn't cross my mind, or I'm like, this is out for dinner last night. The way we were sitting, I'm like, anybody could just walk up behind me. Mm-hmm. But I just make myself do it. I don't think there's anybody that wants to kill me. Yeah, probably, but whatever. So from that aspect, it did. Yeah. And you're out in public working at the prison. You're always counting inmates. You're always like scanning their bodies to see for foreign objects, lumps in their pockets and that kind of stuff. And so you're sitting at a restaurant and some dude goes to take a piss and you're like, he's been there for like 10 minutes. Why is he doing that long? And he comes back out and you're like scanning him, or you know what I mean? Like that mentally, that stuff will get to you. But since I've left there, now looking back and realizing what I was in the middle of, and when you're doing the job and you're working with death row and you're the executions and stuff, you just don't, it's just you doing your job and you don't think about it that much.
Yeah.
So, but I would say it probably affects me more now than it probably ever has. I don't know if it's because I got kids, if it's because I'm getting older. I don't know what changed it.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm talking about it publicly and I used to not.
Yeah,
So.
of course. I mean, also too, like I feel like 40 is, I mean, I'm not 40 yet, but like you're not a kid anymore. You're not in your 30s anymore. You were doing this in your 20s, and it's like you're a full-blown adult. I mean, you're a full-blown adult in your 30s, but 40 you are, and like you said, you have a family. So you have a different perspective on things now.
Yeah. Yeah. When you hit that 40 mark, for me, the last year or two has been probably what people call midlife crisis, where I haven't went out and bought a Corvette or nothing, but you know what I mean? Where you start thinking about that stuff. You're like, man, I'm halfway through my life. What did I do with? So why did you leave after 14 months? I just realized it wasn't for me. If I would have had family in the area, possibly. But by that point, I kind of knew law enforcement wasn't going to be for me, just because of growing up Amish, where I lived such a quiet life, mentally, emotionally, everything is so quiet. And then going into such a high stress, what I would consider high stress, I just realized I don't want to spend the rest of my life seeing people the way that will make you see people. And so that's why I gave it up and quit. And I didn't have family down there. So I was either working at the prison, hanging out with other COs, or I was going to the bar. And even at the bars, you get where you don't enjoy it as much no more. And it just wasn't, all the way around, wasn't a good setting for me.
Did you see other COs who were doing it longer than you, maybe in their 20th year, who were impacted and it was kind of eye-opening to you?
Somewhat, yeah. Yeah. It seemed like there was two different types. There's the type that if they had a good family structure, a solid background, they somehow could separate from it, and they would leave work, go home, and they became the dad, the grandpa, and then there's those other ones that they eat, sleep, and breathe it. They can't separate from it, and it just devours you, and then your whole life becomes that. And then you go through 4 marriages, and your kids don't talk to you because you live this crazy, not normal life, and the way you see humans is not the same.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say they pretty much split down into 2 types. But yeah, there was those guys there like that.
Did you see alcohol abuse at all from COs? Just trying to like block out what they were doing for a 9 to 5.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure the stats they would be significantly higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was still relatively fresh out of the Amish. I'd only been out for 10 years at that point, give or take 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before that I lived with family that was in Indiana. And so even though we were not Amish, we still weren't like fully plunged into the world. And so in the middle of all that, I could be like, I guess public people just drink more than I thought. But now looking back, yeah, it was people dealing with it's a way of blocking it out.
Yeah.
Ending their, yeah.
You really went from one extreme to the other. Amish to death row.
Yeah.
What did you end up doing after for work?
When I left Tennessee, I struggled with depression a lot worse. So I kind of bummed around for a few years. And then, long story short, went to Pennsylvania for oil field work, or started going out there for oil field work. That was in 2011. And we're still back and forth there a lot for work. So wife and I started our own trucking company in 2018. And so now we do the trucking for ourselves and have a small farm with some animals, and then have a small YouTube channel where we show some trucking videos, but mostly just me and the kids with the chickens and the horses and the cows. And so
what's the name of your YouTube channel?
Beachy Life Stuff.
Beachy Life Stuff.
Correct. People can go there and watch me, and I call it my therapy. Yep. Go be around the critters because it just detoxes your day. And so they can go to my channel and watch me in my therapy session.
And it's Beachy, Beechy, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Life Stuff. Yep.
Cool. That's awesome.
It should pop up.
Is that like a form of meditation for you? And, to help you get centered, and you're with your family, and you're not having to you're not working, or, it's time off, and
100%. At 100% is, yes. I'm the type of person that's always got to be busy. And so there's just something about, maybe it's my Amish background, I don't know, but there's something very grounding to me being around animals, raising animals. We process our own beef and stuff. So we eat all the meat we grow, or all the meat we eat, we grow ourselves. There's just something very grounding for me, at least, for being the livestock, that lifestyle. So yes, it's 100%. It's what keeps me grounded.
It's important to have that. It's important to have those activities that kind of help you balance, not even a work-life balance, but just like a life, free balance, basically. That freedom, when you're meditating and you're recentering yourself, you're shutting yourself off from the world and creating silence in your head. It's important to have those things and to reach that place to kind of quiet the chaos that's going on in your head.
Yes. Yep. And for me, I have to force the chaos to get quiet. And so that's what I do to force
That's amazing.
It's still probably loud to most people, but when you're used to other loud work and other crap, and you're like, what I need to do? I need to get on the tractor and go feed some cows and go walk around them and look at them. And then it's just like, it's the whole world to ease.
You mentioned after working as a correctional officer, the depression. Again, you said came back. What was that like?
Well, I think I struggled with suicide after that. And it was, I think it was just feeling, probably going into what I thought I was going into law enforcement kind of gave me purpose. And so it helped me to pull through a little bit after leaving the Amish. But then after I realized that's not what I wanted to do. And then by this point, it also didn't have a lot of family around me at the time. And most of my friends, and I think probably most people struggling with depression, you withdraw from your family and friends. And so it all piled together, and it just got really dark.
You were thinking about suicide?
I did, yeah. Yep, I struggle. I've never talked openly about that.
Yeah.
Or public. I've never talked even to my family about that. So hello, people. But I did. I went when I was out working the oil field first, and I worked a ton of hours. Like oil field during that time, at least in Pennsylvania, it was really booming, and we worked way too many hours. I can't even legally say how many hours we were working, but which was then it worked as I probably kind of became a medication for me. But then while you're doing all that work, like, oh, I got this for my purpose in life. But then you're not sleeping and you're not resting enough. You don't have that balance. And so it just like, probably kind of like a drug addiction. It just kind of eats itself. And before you know it, the thing that you think is curing you is killing you. I ended up down a pretty dark hole. There's only about a week or so where I was like actively looking, maybe more than that, for a way to end myself without doing it in a form that people wouldn't know that it was suicide, because I didn't want to break my mom's heart.
Yeah.
That was the main thing that kept me from
doing it.
Yep.
What did you do to help yourself find? Because I feel like I had another guest on here fairly recently, and they were talking about they attempted suicide, failed at it. And he had said, I felt like I had no purpose. You just brought up purpose. How did you find the purpose you needed to pull yourself out of that?
I started seeing a counselor. I reached out to a Christian radio station that would run ads for, I think it was Moody. I can't remember the radio station now, but they ran ads for Christian counseling. And I reached out to him, and they hooked me up with a depression specialist that was in the area. I was out, and he was from out in Pennsylvania. I was working the oil field. And so I drove, I don't even know, 15, 20 minutes to see him once a week. And I could call him anytime I wanted to. It basically came down to me realizing that I am forgiven for all the craziness and the stuff I've done to myself. And then realizing that there is something a lot bigger in life than just me. So I wish I had a great story of like, oh, I stopped beside the road and picked up this. And none of that. It just understanding that there's life is much bigger than what I am.
Right.
And that helped me to start making that U-turn, and now life is fresh and new. And
it sounds like you reconnected with God.
yes.
It sounds like maybe you got away from God a little bit, and then you went to therapy again, which I am a huge advocate for. I go to therapy every week.
Do you?
And I was negative 1 week sober. So I was using for 1 week, and then I got sober in therapy, amongst other things as well that helped me get sober. But therapy has been a consistent weekly thing that I've been doing for the past 7 years. Has helped me tremendously. I cannot speak about it, you know, and be more of an advocate for therapy. But it sounds like he helped you it was a Christian therapist, but it sounds like he helped you get back in touch with God.
Okay. If I could just nosedive headfirst in the religion thing, I don't know if your people are like, don't talk about your fucking religion.
No, we love talking about religion on here. Go ahead.
Okay. For me, it was simply, it was simply understanding, because he showed me the Bible tells you that God loves you unconditionally and forgives you. So are you going to do whether you feel like you're forgiven and you feel like you're loved, or are you going to actually believe what it says? And that was the defining moment for me, going, I can feel anything, but that doesn't change facts. And if I believe the Bible is real, and the Bible clearly tells me that God loves me and forgives me for whether it's stuff that I did to myself, stuff, whatever. And that was my defining, refreshing moment. It was in 2011. We had it was an odd timed Easter that year. And it was on Good Friday. I remember the session when it started realizing in my head going, oh, you know what? And that was what saved my life, was understanding, because I struggled with loneliness in my depression, was understanding that God loves me whether I feel like it or not. And so to go down a deeper religious hole, that was what transformed my life completely. And that sounds so plain and stupid to some people, but for me, it saved my life.
No, that's huge. And I had a huge block I tried to get sober before this time. Okay. And I had a huge block, when it came to actually believing it. Mm-hmm. And you said when you started to believe it, that's when your life changed, and that's when you came out of it. And that's when 100%. You found purpose, started to find purpose.
100%.
What piece of advice would you have for the listener who's having trouble actually believing? Like there's a roadblock up.
For me, it was just simply coming to the decision whether I was going to believe my feelings or what it said. And because we can feel a lot of crazy stuff, but is it in Corinthians where it talks about taking every thought captive? So you have to not, this sounds dumb and cliche also, but you have to not allow yourself to believe the negative thoughts. If it's not true, then don't let your brain tell you that. Mm-hmm. And you have to believe it over and over and over again. I used to call it like 30-minute segments, to where I would have 30 minutes of being like, it's just not true. Like it's just worthless. Life is not worth living. But I learned that if you give yourself 30 minutes, that thought train will pass, and then you'll be back to being like, okay, I could probably still make it. And so.
See, I know this is still kind of in the feelings realm, but I had to fake it until I made it.
Really?
Yeah. I had to push myself to believe, but then I ended up believing. So I still stayed in my feeling. Like, let's say a negative thought would pop into my head early in sobriety. I was like, I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm a piece of shit. And then I was like, okay, they're telling me in meetings that I'm not a piece of shit. So the feeling would come in. And although I believed I was a piece of shit, I'm like, well, other people are telling me I'm not a piece of shit. So I'm not a piece of shit. And I would just force it. And then I started praying in the morning. Then I started creating structure in my day. And there were other tools that I implemented that helped me believe.
Yeah.
And then eventually I didn't even realize it. I look back and I'm like, holy shit, I've believed this whole time.
Yeah. And the crazy thing also that most people don't understand, and when you're in the middle of it, you don't understand it, but prayer helps you even I believe there's a God 100%. But even if let's say there is no God and you're praying into
the abyss,
outer space.
Yeah.
Correct. It is kind of like a form of meditation so if you're praying to overcome the thought battle or overcome, like, can you just help me not to have this urge for this next line of Coke for just give me 30 minutes without it. Thinking that thought does help you. It helps pull it is a weird form of like positive thinking, but it really does in the prayer does help your brain like meditate out of that state.
Yeah.
100%. I'm 100% convinced it does. Because there's times that I'll still have times that I'm praying and I'm going, this is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. It's just sitting here talking into outer space, pretending there's a God. But if I do it daily, or I can tell if I'll do it regularly, that it does change my mental state, my mental being 100%. And if I get to where I'm like, life freaking sucks, like everything sucks around you, you're struggling with stuff, you know what? I probably haven't prayed in a couple of weeks or a month or so, and then do it consistently for a week in that form of meditation, so to speak. Even if you delete all of the God stuff out, that form will has helped to pull me through tons of,
100%. I mean, it removes you from those feelings that you're feeling, even if it's just temporarily, it still has an impact. And it somewhat, if not completely, quiets the chaos in your head.
Yes.
And that's what it does for me.
Yep.
And it helps me recenter. And I'm able to even practice humility after that. And then with humility, it's like, oh, well, let me keep an open mind. Because if I'm sitting here saying, oh, my podcast sucks, blah, 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 I suck, I pray, takes me away. And then I'm like, okay, well, Joe Rogan, it took him like 7 years before his podcast popped.
Yep.
I start to keep an open mind to what other people went through or possibilities. And I'm not so one-minded way of thinking.
Yes.
Rome
wasn't built in a day.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
yeah. And everything in life is a piece of puzzle. And so if that 30-minute prayer is that 30-minute segment in this puzzle right now that is going to get you to the next piece and the next piece and the next piece, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. I agree. What is life like for you today other than the YouTube channel?
Mentally, I have to be intentional at quieting my brain, because my brain I tend to take on way more crap and way more everything that I can handle. So, but my current life, I'm grateful for life every single day. And I have kids. And so now, still being alive, not having committed suicide, 11, 12 years ago, life is so fresh. And it's been that many years, but it's still, when you have kids and you have other things going on, you're realizing life is bigger than you. Everything goes into perspective. Sorry, that's probably a rough, bad answer. My brain is running and I haven't ran down this avenue in a while.
It's
life
great.
For me now is fresh. Life is fresh.
Dude, you have a family. Life is great. From what you just said, it sounds awesome. You have, 2 kids?
Yes.
How old?
4 and 6.
Okay, so you're in the thick of it, and they're your life. Other than 100%. Work, you have your kids and your wife. You're living a full life, and that you have purpose today.
Yes, yeah, and you realize now, looking back in that moment, you realize how shallow you were thinking, or how small of a picture you were seeing, and now when you see that's still bad. I can't find the words. Life is good.
Dude, you gave us a nice little window into a beautiful life. You have your business too, and you have purpose today. And I feel like that is very important. And your purpose today may not necessarily be the same purpose as you saw it when you were 26, 27. Like you just said, you were thinking very small-minded at the time.
100%.
And then now I have a daughter. I live for my daughter. I don't care. You could tell me I'm bankrupt tomorrow. That's fine. I'll find a way for my daughter. And that's my job.
100%. She's your purpose way bigger than yourself. Yep.
And at 26, 27, 28, I never thought I would think that way, or that would be my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're at that age, you're like, oh God, please don't be pregnant.
Don't be pregnant. Make me a millionaire.
That's right.
Whatever. So,
yeah.
well, David, Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Do you plug your YouTube channel one more time so people who didn't catch it the first time can.
On Beachy Life Stuff on YouTube, Rumble. I do a lot of short videos, usually dumb dad jokes, dumb Amish jokes. On Facebook is also under Beachy Life Stuff. The TikToks, basically all the social media platforms I think I'm on.
Did you say,
on one of them.
Did you say the TikToks?
I do because
TikToks.
I know it's TikToks, but it's one of my dumb dad jokes. I'm going to get on the TikToks and post. Anyway.
Well, thank you very much, David. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate you coming on. And
thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate it.
And I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Helps a lot more people than you realize.
Yeah.
And is going to down the road.
Yeah,
you
it's
just
a
don't
beautiful
see all
thing.
those yet. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.